Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually think about this. Don't just skim past it. Think about the last time you walked into a room full of people you didn't know. Maybe it was a party. Maybe it was a work event. Maybe it was a wedding where you only knew the bride or groom, and suddenly you're standing there with a plate of food and a glass of something cold, and absolutely nobody to talk to. Do you remember that feeling? That specific, quiet, slightly hollow feeling of being surrounded by people and still feeling completely alone? That feeling of watching everyone else seem to just flow naturally into conversations, laughing easily, exchanging cards, making plans, and wondering what they know that you don't? What secret they were given that somehow skipped you? I remember that feeling. I remember it very well. And if you've ever felt it, even once, then the next 2 hours of your life are going to be among the most important 2 hours you've ever spent. Because today we are going deep, deep, deep into one of the most transformative books ever written about the art of human connection. The book is called How to Talk to Anyone, and it was written by a woman named Leil Lowndes who spent decades studying, researching, and testing every principle inside these pages. This is not theory. This is not philosophy for its own sake. This is a practical, tested, battle-proven toolkit for becoming the kind of person that other people genuinely love to be around. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's change your social life, starting right now. Part 1. Why most people are doing this all wrong and don't even know it. Here's a truth that might sting a little, but I say it with love. Most people are working incredibly hard at social situations and getting almost none of the results they want. And the reason is that they're working hard on the wrong things. They're obsessing over what to say. They're rehearsing their opening lines in the car on the way to the event. They're Googling interesting conversation topics the night before a date. And while all of that comes from a genuine desire to connect, it's misguided energy. Because the research, and we're talking decades of social psychology research here, shows something that is both humbling and liberating. People form their impression of you before you say a single word. Within the first 7 seconds of seeing you, some studies say even faster, the human brain has already processed an enormous amount of information and reached a preliminary verdict. Are you confident? Are you warm? Are you trustworthy? Are you someone worth knowing? All of this gets decided through body language, facial expression, posture, eye contact, and energy before language even enters the picture. Think about a real example. Imagine you're at a professional networking event and 2 people walk in within a few minutes of each other. The first person enters with their head slightly down, shoulders curled forward, immediately looks at their phone, and drifts toward the food table without making eye contact with anyone. The second person pauses at the doorway, looks around the room with a relaxed, open gaze, smiles at nobody in particular, just at the room, and walks in with their chin slightly up, their shoulders back, their pace unhurried. Now, you haven't spoken to either of these people. You know absolutely nothing about their intelligence, their personality, their humor, their kindness. But you already have a strong intuition about which one you'd rather talk to. We all do. And that intuition was formed entirely on nonverbal information in under 10 seconds. This is the playing field that Leil Lowndes is teaching us to master. And the beautiful thing, the genuinely exciting thing, is that all of it is learnable. Part 2. The flooding smile, the most underrated social superpower. Let's start with the smile. And I know, you might be thinking a smile, really, is this going to be that basic? But stay with me, because what Leil teaches about the smile is going to completely reframe everything you think you know about this simple act. Most smiles that people give in social situations are what you might call greeting smiles. They're reflexive. The moment you see someone flash, the smile is already there. It's fast, it's automatic, and it's completely indistinguishable from the smile you just gave the last 17 people you saw. It's not a lie, exactly, but it's not personal either. And people feel that distinction even when they can't articulate it. What Leil teaches is called the flooding smile, and the difference is in the timing. Here's exactly how you do it. When you first make eye contact with someone, whether you're being introduced or you just notice them across the room, you don't immediately smile. You hold the eye contact for just a beat. 1 second, maybe 2. Your face is neutral, open, present, not blank, not cold, just looking, taking them in. actually seeing them as a human being. And then, slowly, warmly, like the sun rising over a horizon, the smile spreads across your face. It starts at the corners of your eyes, it moves to your mouth, and it builds until it's full and genuine. What this does to the other person is remarkable and immediate. They feel the smile was caused by them. They feel that you looked at them, and something about specifically them made you smile. That 1-second delay transforms the smile from a social reflex into a personal gift. And people remember personal gifts. Let me give you a real-life scenario. Imagine you're at a job interview, and you've been waiting in the lobby for 10 minutes. The interviewer comes out. Now, most candidates immediately plaster on a smile the second the door opens. But you do something different. The interviewer walks out, your eyes meet theirs, and for one quiet second you just see them. You're present. And then your smile comes, warm, slow, genuine. That interviewer has met 20 candidates this week. Most of them gave the same automatic smile within the same reflexive millisecond. You're already different. You're already memorable. You haven't said a word. Part 3. Your eyes are your most powerful communication tool. Now let's talk about eye contact, because this might be the single most misunderstood aspect of human communication. People either avoid it because it feels too intense, too vulnerable, too exposing, or they overdo it in a staring, slightly aggressive way that makes people uncomfortable. The art is in the middle, and Leil calls that art sticky eyes. The concept is this. When you're listening to someone speak, you keep your gaze warmly and gently on their eyes even after they stop talking. Most people look away during pauses. They glance at the floor, they look around the room, they check their drink. It seems harmless. But every time you break eye contact during a pause, you send a tiny subconscious signal to the other person. I might be looking for something more interesting. Sticky eyes means you hold the gaze, not with the intensity of a staring contest, but with the warmth of genuine interest. Like you're not in any rush to look away. Like you're still thinking about what they just said. Here's a real story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a study done where researchers had participants rate conversational partners on qualities like intelligence, warmth, and confidence. The participants who held eye contact significantly more during both speaking and listening were consistently rated higher on all 3 qualities, even when the actual content of their conversations was identical. The eyes communicate things that words simply cannot. Curiosity, respect, engagement, safety. And in a world where most people are half present, physically in the conversation, but mentally somewhere else, full, warm eye contact feels almost shockingly rare and beautiful. Leil also introduces a related technique called the triangle. When you're in a conversation and you want to convey deep interest and warmth, especially in a romantic or deeply personal context, you move your gaze in a slow, gentle triangle between the person's 2 eyes and their mouth. Not in an obvious, mechanical way, very naturally as the conversation flows. This triangular movement signals deep engagement and creates a sense of closeness and intimacy that is incredibly powerful. It's the difference between looking at someone and actually being with them. Part 4. The body never lies. Mastering your physical presence. Your body is sending signals every moment you're in a room with other people. Signals that either invite connection or push it away. Most people are completely unaware of what their bodies are broadcasting. Let's change that right now. Leil introduces a posture technique she calls hang by your teeth. Here's the image. Imagine there is a hook in the ceiling directly above you. From that hook hangs a strong leather strap, and you're holding that strap gently but firmly between your teeth. What does your body do? Your head lifts. Your chin comes up. Your chest opens. Your shoulders go back. Your spine lengthens naturally. Your whole frame becomes upright, open, and present without being stiff or military. Now release the image, but hold the feeling. That's the posture you want in social situations. Not because it looks good, though it does, but because it changes your internal chemistry. When you expand physically, your brain interprets that expansion as confidence, and it responds by actually generating more of the neurochemicals associated with confidence. Posture is not just cosmetic. It is neurological. Think about someone you know, maybe a colleague or a friend or someone you've seen at events, who just has that quality of ease in social situations, that quality of seeming completely comfortable wherever they are. 9 times out of 10, if you look carefully, part of what's creating that impression is their physical presence. They're not folded in on themselves. They're not shrinking. They're taking up their full, appropriate space in the room, not aggressively, but comfortably, as if they belong exactly where they are. You can learn to project that same quality not by faking it, but by literally practicing the physical postures that trigger the internal experience of belonging. Then there's the big baby pivot. This is one of those techniques that sounds almost too simple to be transformative, but the impact is real and immediate. When you're introduced to someone new, you pivot your entire body toward them. Not just your face, not just your head, your whole body, shoulders, chest, hips, feet, all of it rotates to face them directly. This is the physical equivalent of saying, "You have my complete and undivided attention." Babies do this naturally. When something interests them, their whole little body rotates toward it with total commitment. As adults, we often only half-turn, maintaining one foot pointed toward the exit or the next conversation. The big baby pivot closes that distance completely, and the other person feels it as a physical statement of interest and respect. And let's not forget about the entrance. Leil is very specific and very right about the power of how you enter a room. She calls the confident entrance the giraffe walk, and the idea is exactly what it sounds like. You come in with your head up, your neck long, your gaze elevated and sweeping gently across the room. Not frantically looking for someone you know, not staring at the floor, not making a desperate beeline for the nearest friendly face. You pause, you look, you orient yourself, and then you move deliberately, unhurriedly, as if you already know you belong here. I know this can feel uncomfortable at first. There's a vulnerability to being visible. But here's the thing. The discomfort is temporary. The impression it creates is lasting. Part 5. The handshake, the hug, and the power of touch. Physical connection, done appropriately and with genuine warmth, is one of the fastest ways to create rapport and trust between human beings. We are, at our core, social mammals who are wired for touch, and the complete absence of physical connection in professional settings can create a coldness that words struggle to overcome. The handshake is still, in most professional Western contexts, the primary physical greeting. And Leil is very specific about what makes a great handshake. She calls it the welcoming handshake. Thumb joint meeting thumb joint. The web of skin between your thumb and index finger pressing against theirs, a firm but comfortable grip. And then the key move. As you shake with your right hand, you briefly cover the back of their hand with your left. This double-handed grasp, held for just 2 or 3 seconds, creates a warmth that a standard one-hand shake simply cannot match. It communicates, "I'm genuinely glad to meet you." It's the physical embodiment of sincerity. Now, of course, you read the room. Not everyone is comfortable with this level of physical warmth immediately, and cultural context always matters. But in the right circumstances, it is remarkably effective. Beyond the handshake, Leil talks about what she calls touch whispering, the practice of using very brief, light physical contact during conversation to emphasize connection. A light touch on the forearm when making a point. A brief hand on the shoulder when someone shares something meaningful. These touches, when done naturally and without aggression, trigger the release of oxytocin in both you and the person you touch. The same bonding hormone that's released between mothers and children, between close friends, between lovers. Appropriately deployed, a moment of gentle physical contact can build more rapport in 3 seconds than 5 minutes of words. Part 6. The lost art of small talk, and why it's actually a big deal. I hate small talk. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you said it yourself? It's become almost a badge of intellectual honor. I'm a deep, meaningful person, and I have no patience for idle chit-chat. I understand that feeling, but I want to challenge it because I think it fundamentally misunderstands what small talk actually is and what it actually does. Small talk is not the enemy of deep conversation. Small talk is the doorway to deep conversation. It is the warm-up. It is the trust building. It is the way that two strangers signal to each other. I am safe. I am friendly. I am open to knowing you. Think of it like the stretching you do before a run. The stretching is not the run. But if you skip the stretching and just sprint, you'll pull something. Small talk done well is the social equivalent of stretching. It prepares both people for something deeper. Leil's first technique in this section is never the naked hello. The concept is simple. When you greet someone, you never leave the greeting standing alone. You always attach something to it, something that opens a door and give the other person something to walk through. Instead of hi, how are you, followed by silence, you say hi. This is such a beautiful venue. Have you been to events here before? Or hi, how do you know the host? I've been friends with him since college, and I always love meeting people from other parts of his life. The content of the add-on is almost irrelevant. What matters is that you've given the conversation somewhere to go. You've placed a stone in the river and invited the other person to step on it. Here's a real-life example of why this matters so much. Think about two people at a work conference. Person who walks up to a colleague they barely know and says, "Oh, hey, good to see you." The colleague smiles awkwardly. "Yeah, you too." Silence. Person A drifts away. Person B walks up to the same colleague and says, "Oh, hey, I was just at the morning keynote. What did you think?" I found the part about AI automation actually kind of terrifying and fascinating at the same time. Now, the colleague has something real to respond to. Now, there's a conversation. Person B has done something that seems simple, but is actually a learnable skill. They prepared a conversational bridge before walking up to someone. They thought, what can I say that makes it easy for the other person to respond? That one mental habit changes everything. Part 7. How to never run out of things to say. One of the most common fears people have in social situations, right up there with public speaking, is the fear of running out of things to say. The dreaded silence. The awkward pause. The moment where both people look at their shoes and wonder if the other person is judging them for being boring. Leil has several beautiful solutions for this, and they all come from the same root insight. The best conversationalists are not the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who ask the best questions and then actually listen to the answers. The first technique is called never the naked thank you. It works like this: whenever someone does something for you, says something kind to you, or compliments you, instead of just saying thank you and letting it land flat, you attach a bridge. Thank you so much for recommending that restaurant. I went last week, and I actually ended up talking to the chef for 20 minutes about how he got interested in Thai food. Do you have a connection to the food world, or was that just a random recommendation? See what happened there? You took a two-word conversational dead end and turned it into an open door. You gave the other person 3 or 4 different threads to pull on. This is the art of the conversational bridge. Constantly keeping the ball in the air, constantly providing new openings, never letting the exchange collapse into silence through sheer lack of material. Then there's the latest news technique. Before any social event where you'll be meeting new people or reconnecting with acquaintances, you spend 10 minutes reading the top stories of the day. Not so that you can lecture people about current events, but so that you have something to offer. Did you see what happened with that thing in the news today? What did you make of it? This is not about being a news junkie. It's about being prepared to offer a conversational starting point from something that's on people's minds right now. The most socially fluent people I've ever known are not necessarily the most knowledgeable people, but they're almost always the most prepared people. They show up ready to give the conversation somewhere to go. And here's one that I particularly love. Leil calls it be a word detective. When you're listening to someone talk, you're not just passively receiving words. You're actively scanning for the words they say with extra energy, extra speed, extra brightness. Because hidden inside people's ordinary conversation are clues to what genuinely matters to them. Someone mentions their weekend and says they just kind of hung around the house, did some stuff, watched some TV. Oh, and I went to this ceramics class actually, and that last part, that oh, and that is the word detective jackpot. That small, almost accidental mention of the ceramics class was said with just a little more life in it. That's the thread you pull. Wait, a ceramics class? Tell me about that. How did you get into that? And now you've found a real conversation. The one they actually wanted to have, but didn't know how to introduce. Part 8. The magic of making people feel heard. Here is something I want you to sit with for a moment, because I think it's one of the most important truths in this entire book. Most people, and I mean the vast majority of people walking around in the world today, do not feel truly heard. They go through their days talking to people, at work, at home, with friends, with family. And while words are exchanged and information is transferred, the feeling of being genuinely listened to, genuinely understood, genuinely seen, that feeling is remarkably rare. And the person who gives that feeling to others, that person becomes something close to irreplaceable in the lives of the people they meet. Leil introduces a technique here called echo, and it's one of those things that sounds almost embarrassingly simple until you try it and feel the power of it. When someone says something to you, you repeat the last few words they said, not robotically, not mockingly, but with warmth and curiosity, almost like a question. Someone says, I've been really stressed about the project at work lately. You say softly, stressed about the project? And then you wait. And something remarkable happens. They open. They expand. They start talking more, going deeper, sharing more of what's actually going on. Why does this work? Because being echoed signals to the deepest part of the human brain, this person is tracking me. This person cares enough to stay with what I'm saying rather than leaping to their own response. It feels like being heard at a level that most people don't experience very often. And when someone gives that to you, you want to stay near them. Connected to this is the talking gesture request. After someone makes a statement or tells you something, instead of immediately responding with your own thought or pivoting to a new topic, you lean in slightly, or you make a small, gentle, inviting gesture, and you say, tell me more. Just those 3 words. Or what was that like? Or how did that make you feel? These are not complicated questions. They don't require any specific knowledge or preparation. They just require the genuine intention of wanting to know more about this person's experience. And that intention, that authentic wanting to go deeper, is felt immediately and profoundly. There's also what Leil calls the parroting technique, taken a step further. She calls it be a parrot with a point. This is where, instead of just echoing the last few words, you reflect back the emotional content of what someone shared, slightly reframed. Someone says, I've been working so hard on this for months, and it just feels like nobody notices. You say, it sounds like you've put everything into this, and you're really not feeling the recognition you've earned. Now you've done something extraordinary. You've shown that you didn't just hear their words. You heard their meaning. You've translated their experience back to them with care and accuracy. This is the foundation of what therapists call active listening. And it works not because it's a technique, but because it is the most genuine expression of actually paying attention that human beings have developed. Part 9, the power of names, and how to never forget one again. Let's take a few minutes to talk about names, because this is an area where most people habitually undersell themselves and lose connection opportunities without even realizing it. Dale Carnegie, who wrote the other great book on human relations, said that a person's name is the sweetest sound they will ever hear. And neuroscience backs this up completely. When you hear your own name, a specific and distinctive pattern of brain activity occurs that doesn't happen with any other word. Your brain essentially says, that's me. This matters. Pay attention. And the person saying your name becomes, in that moment, associated with something positive and significant at a neurological level. Leil's primary technique around names is what she calls sneaky name usage. Here's the practical structure. When you first meet someone and learn their name, say it back immediately. So great to meet you, Marcus. First usage. Then about 5 or 10 minutes into the conversation, work it in again naturally. That's such an interesting perspective, Marcus. I hadn't thought about it that way. Second usage. And then, when you say goodbye, it was genuinely wonderful talking with you, Marcus. I hope I run into you again soon. Third usage. 3 times. And by the end of the conversation, Marcus doesn't just remember you. Marcus feels known by you. He feels like you truly saw him, not just as an anonymous person at an event, but as Marcus specifically. And because you've used his name 3 times, you will also remember it far better than if you'd heard it once and never used it again. But what about when you forget someone's name? Because it happens, It happens to everyone, and it especially happens at busy events where you're meeting many people in quick succession. Leil's advice here is so refreshingly human. She says, just be honest. Don't avoid the person. Don't pretend you remember. Walk up to them with warmth and genuine apology and say, I'm so sorry. I know we met earlier and I really enjoyed our conversation, but your name has genuinely slipped my mind. Would you forgive me and remind me? And here's what happens almost every single time. The other person laughs, says, of course, it's Rachel, and actually feels warmer toward you than before. Because your honesty was disarming. Because you didn't pretend. Because you cared enough to ask rather than just avoid them for the rest of the evening. Authenticity, even in moments of embarrassment, builds connection. Part 10. How to work any room. The complete guide. Networking events, parties, professional gatherings, cocktail hours. These are the situations that reduce many otherwise confident, capable people to quiet anxiety. And I get it. There's something uniquely challenging about a room full of strangers where the implicit expectation is that you will just figure out how to connect with people. No agenda, no structured activity, just pure unscripted human interaction. For introverts especially, this can feel genuinely exhausting even before it begins. But here's what Leil knows, and what I want you to understand going into this section. Working a room is a skill. It is a completely learnable, completely practicable set of behaviors that anyone, introverted or extroverted, shy or naturally outgoing, can develop and improve. It is not a personality trait you either have or don't have. It is a craft. And like any craft, it gets easier and more natural the more you practice it. She starts with what she calls the 10-second rule. The premise is this. When you're near a stranger and there's an opportunity for connection, perhaps you're standing next to each other at the drinks table, or you're both looking at the same piece of art at a gallery event, or you're waiting for the same elevator. You have approximately 10 seconds before the social window closes and the moment passes into awkwardness. You have to make a move within those 10 seconds. And the move does not need to be clever or memorable or perfectly crafted. It just needs to be a move. These appetizers are incredible. Have you tried the Little Mushroom once? What a beautiful venue. Is this your first time here? I love your tie. Is that a custom print? It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you make it. Because every time you let that 10-second window close without acting, you reinforce the habit of paralysis. And every time you act, even imperfectly, you reinforce the habit of connection. There's also a technique Leil calls eavesdropping in, and yes, she literally means listening to a group's conversation before you join it. When you want to enter a group that's already talking, you hover at the edge for 30 seconds. Genuinely listen to what's being discussed, find something real you have to add, and then when the moment is right, when there's a natural pause, you step in with your contribution. Not with sorry to interrupt, because that creates awkwardness, but just with your thought, offered naturally and with a smile. I couldn't help overhearing. You're talking about Italy? I just got back 3 weeks ago, and I'm still not over it. You flow in, and most groups welcome a new, engaged voice, especially when that voice arrives with something genuine to offer rather than just standing there waiting for someone to notice them. Part 11. How to talk to powerful people without losing your mind. At some point in your life, and probably multiple points, you will find yourself in conversation with someone who is significantly more powerful, more accomplished, more famous, or more influential than you in some specific context. Maybe it's a senior executive at a conference. Maybe it's a celebrated artist at a gallery opening. Maybe it's a professor you deeply admire after a lecture. And there's a very specific cocktail of emotions that tends to arise in those moments. Excitement, nervousness, a slight loss of vocabulary, a sudden inability to remember anything interesting about yourself. Leil calls this the power person panic, and she has a completely practical way out of it. The first part of the solution is preparation. Before any event where you know you might encounter powerful or notable people, you do your homework. Not in a stalker way, in an admirer's way. You read something they wrote, or something written about them. You learn one thing they've accomplished that genuinely interests you. You find a thread of real curiosity inside yourself about who they are. Because here's what happens when you approach a powerful person without preparation. You either freeze up or you start performing. You say something you think will impress them rather than something you genuinely mean. And powerful people have finely tuned detectors for performance. They meet performers all day long. What they almost never meet, what almost nobody gives them, is genuine curiosity. A real question about their real experience. Someone who is actually interested in them as a human being rather than as a resource to be accessed. Be that person and you will be unforgettable. Leil's specific technique here is called Never the Naked Question. The idea is that when you ask someone a question, especially someone accomplished or powerful, you never leave the question standing alone, bare and interrogative. You first offer something, a thought, an observation, a brief personal connection to the topic. And then you ask, so instead of what advice would you give to someone starting out in this industry? Which is the question every powerful person hears constantly. You say, I read your piece last year about the shift in how companies approach talent development, and it changed the way I was thinking about my own career trajectory. Given how much the landscape has shifted since then, what's your take on where the most interesting opportunities are right now? You've done 3 things. You've shown that you know their work. You've shown that their work affected you specifically. And you've asked a question that is current and specific rather than generic and exhausted. They want to answer that question because it's actually interesting. Part 12, the language of genuine compliments. Let's talk about compliments because this is an area where most people make consistent, subtle errors that undermine the very connection they're trying to build. There are compliments that land and there are compliments that fall flat, and the difference is not in the sincerity. Most people are sincere when they compliment others. The difference is in the specificity and the delivery. Generic compliments, you look great. You're so smart. You did an amazing job. Feel good for about half a second and then evaporate. They're too broad to feel personal. They could be said to anyone. Leil says that the most powerful compliments are specific to the exact person you're complimenting, referencing something specific they did or said or created and delivered with the genuine warmth of someone who actually noticed. Compare, you were great in that meeting to that point you made in the meeting about how the data doesn't account for seasonal variation. I've been thinking about that for the last hour. That reframed the whole thing for me. Which one means more? The second one, by an enormous margin, because it shows you were actually paying attention. It shows you thought about what they said after the fact. It shows that their contribution had a real impact on your thinking. That is not just a compliment. That is a gift of recognition. Leil also introduces one of her most elegant techniques, grapevine glory. Instead of complimenting someone directly, which can sometimes feel awkward for the recipient who doesn't know quite how to respond, you plant the compliment with a mutual friend or colleague and let it travel to them through the grapevine. You tell their colleague, I have to tell you, what Jennifer did in that client presentation was genuinely brilliant. She has a quality in front of an audience that's rare. I was impressed. And when that gets back to Jennifer, which it will, it lands with 10 times the force of a direct compliment. Because she knows you said it when she wasn't there. She knows it wasn't performance. She knows it was real. Indirect, sincere praise is among the most powerful relational gifts you can give another human being. Part 13. How to handle awkward moments, faux pas, and social disasters. Life is messy. Social situations are imperfect. Sometimes you say the wrong thing, forget the wrong name, arrive at the wrong party on the wrong night, or make a joke that lands in the exact opposite way you intended. These moments are inevitable. They happen to everyone. The question is not how to avoid them entirely. The question is how to handle them with grace when they arrive. Leil's overarching principle here is what she might call own it and move forward. When something awkward happens, when you say something that creates a brief chill in the room, when you realize mid-sentence that you're about to say something you shouldn't, the worst thing you can do is freeze or over-apologize or make a big deal out of it. The second worst thing is to pretend it didn't happen in a way that's obviously pretending. The best thing is to acknowledge it briefly, warmly, with a touch of self-aware humor if appropriate, and then gently move the conversation forward. Oh, I just realized how that sounded, and I want to walk that back a little. What I actually meant was clean, direct, unpretentious, and the conversation continues. She also talks specifically about the social disaster of making a comment about something, thinking you're on safe, friendly territory, and then discovering that the person you said it to has a very personal and painful connection to exactly that topic. You make a joke about job security, and the person across from you was just laid off 3 days ago. You make a comment about marriage, and the person just told their partner they want a divorce. These moments happen, and Leil's advice is simple. Don't try to frantically walk it back in a way that makes the moment bigger. Acknowledge it with genuine warmth. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. That was clumsy of me. And then, if the person seems to want to talk about it, you create the space. If they clearly want to move on, you help them move on. You read the room, you follow their lead, and you trust that kindness and awareness count for more than perfect execution. Part 14. Digital Communication. Carrying these skills into text, email, and video. We live in an age where a significant portion of our social and professional communication happens not face-to-face, but through screens, through text messages, emails, video calls, voice messages, and social media interactions. And the principles of this book don't disappear in digital contexts. They translate, sometimes beautifully, sometimes in ways that require a little more intentionality. On the phone, whether audio or video, Leil makes a point that might be the most practically useful single piece of advice in the entire book for the modern era. She says, smile before you pick up. Physically smile, even before you say hello. Here's why. When you smile, the muscles in your face that create the smile also subtly alter the shape of your mouth, the resonance of your vocal cords, and the airflow of your breath. And this changes how your voice sounds. Literally, people on the other end of the phone can hear a smile in your voice even when they cannot see your face. Studies have confirmed this. This smile voice is a real phenomenon, and it creates warmth and welcome in the other person before a single meaningful word has been exchanged. For emails and text messages, especially professional ones, Leil's principle of never the naked message applies just as much as it does in person. When you reach out to someone, you don't just make a request or deliver information and stop there. You personalize. You warm it up. You reference something specific, something from a previous conversation, something relevant to them personally, something that shows you're not sending a form message. Hi, Rebecca. I hope the workshop you mentioned went well last week. I wanted to circle back about the proposal we discussed. That one sentence of personalization at the beginning, those 8 extra words, changed the entire emotional register of the message. Rebecca doesn't feel like a line on a task list. She feels like a person you actually remember and care about. Part 15. Building the reputation that makes people seek you out. We're moving into the final major section of this book now, and I want to spend some real time here because this is where everything we've discussed starts to compound into something much bigger than individual techniques. This is where we talk about reputation, the long-term impression you leave on people over time, and how to deliberately build the kind of reputation that makes people genuinely excited to introduce you to others, to include you in opportunities to seek out your company. Leil talks about something she calls the carrier pigeon. The idea is this. When you learn something that you know would be specifically interesting or useful to someone in your network, you pass it along. You don't hoard information. You share it. Hey, Michael, I know you're really interested in sustainable architecture, and I just read this incredible article about a new building material that's being developed in Denmark. I immediately thought of you, sending it over. What this does is extraordinary. First, it demonstrates that you actually think about the people in your life when you're going about your own business, not just when you need something from them. Second, it creates a cycle of reciprocity. When people receive value from being connected to you, they naturally look for ways to return it. Third, over time, it builds you a reputation as someone who is generous, who pays attention, and who makes people feel thought of. That reputation is worth more than almost any professional credential. There's also a technique she calls follow up like your life depends on it. And the message is simple, but the discipline required is not. After every meaningful interaction, a great conversation at an event, a productive meeting, an introduction that felt important, you follow up. Not generically, not great meeting you, but with something specific to your actual conversation. It was such a pleasure meeting you at the conference yesterday. I went home and looked up the book you mentioned, Thinking Fast and Slow, and I've already bought it and started the first chapter. I'd love to continue the conversation about how it applies to what you're doing in behavioral economics. Now you've done something remarkable. You've shown that the conversation mattered to you after it ended. You've shown that you took action based on what they said. You've created a bridge from that one meeting to an ongoing connection. And most people, because most people don't follow up at all or follow up generically, will remember this specific, personal follow-up vividly. Part 16, The Deepest Truth. Why Genuine Interest is the Master Key. We are in the final stretch now, my friend, and I want to bring us home with the truth that underlies every single technique in this book, the master key that all of these tools are built to serve. And that truth is this: genuinely interested people are genuinely interesting. The single most powerful thing you can do to transform your social life, your professional relationships, and your experience of being human in the world is to actually, truly, sincerely become more interested in the people around you. Not as a strategy, not as a performance, not as a means to an end, but as a genuine practice of expanding your curiosity about human beings. Every single person you have ever met, every single person sitting on that subway, walking down that street, standing in that line at the coffee shop, has a story inside them that would genuinely fascinate you if you knew it, has experienced something you haven't experienced, has survived something you don't know about, has a passion or a fear or a dream that would surprise you completely. And most of them walk through most of their days never being asked about any of it. Leil calls this quality being a first-class noticer. She says that the people who are truly extraordinary at human connection share one quiet superpower above all others. They notice things. They notice the small detail, the tiny flicker of emotion, the word said with just a little more energy than the others. The moment when someone's face changes slightly when a certain topic comes up. They notice and they respond. Gently, warmly, without making people feel exposed or analyzed. Just with the quiet, powerful signal, I see you. I'm paying attention. You matter to me. And here's the beautiful paradox at the heart of all of this. When you become someone who is genuinely interested in others, when you ask the real questions, when you listen with your whole self, when you remember the small things and follow up on them, when you make people feel seen and heard and valued, you naturally become more interesting yourself. Not because you're trying to be interesting, but because people who are truly curious about the world and the people in it carry a kind of aliveness with them that is magnetic. You can feel it when you're in their presence. The room gets a little more interesting. The conversation goes a little deeper. The time passes a little faster. You leave feeling a little more alive than when you arrived. That is the goal. That is what this book is ultimately about. Not tricks, not manipulation, not social performance, but the cultivation of genuine human presence, the kind of presence that makes every person you meet feel like they are, for the duration of your time together, the most interesting, most seen, most valued person in the room. That is a rare and beautiful gift, and it is available to every single one of us who is willing to practice it. Part 17, Your Action Plan, Where to Start. All right, we're at the place where I give you the practical bridge between all of this learning and your actual life starting tomorrow. Because here's the truth. Information without implementation is just entertainment. And I know you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here to grow. So let's get specific. This week, just this week, I want you to choose 3 things from everything we've covered today and practice them. Just 3. The flooding smile, sticky eyes, and the follow-up message after your next meaningful conversation. 3 things. Practice them every day this week in the grocery store, in the office, on the phone, at dinner. Notice what changes. Notice how people respond differently. Notice how you feel differently, because you will. There is something deeply satisfying about bringing genuine skill and genuine intention to human interaction. It makes every conversation feel like less of a gamble and more of an adventure. And then next week, add 2 or 3 more. The big baby pivot. Never the naked hello. Be a word detective. Build your skill, set the way you build any real skill set. one layer at a time, with patience, with repetition, and with the self-compassion to know that you will get it wrong sometimes, and that getting it wrong is part of how you eventually get it very, very right. This is not about becoming someone you're not. This is about becoming more fully who you actually are, someone with genuine warmth, genuine curiosity, and genuine care for the human beings around you, and giving that person the skills to express those qualities more powerfully and consistently in the world. Because that person you're becoming, they make every room a little warmer. They make every conversation a little richer. They make every person they meet feel, just for a moment, a little less alone. And in a world that desperately needs more of that, there is no more important work you can do. Closing, the final word and the call to action. My friend, we have been on a long journey together today. 2 hours. More than 90 techniques drawn from one of the most practical and deeply human books ever written about connection and communication. And I'm so genuinely grateful that you spent this time here, in this space, growing and learning and investing in yourself. I want to leave you with one final thought before I let you go. You already have everything you need to be extraordinary at this. The warmth is there. The curiosity is there. The care is there. All of it was already inside you before you press play today. What this book gives you, and what I hope this audiobook has given you, is not a new personality. It's the tools to let your real personality shine through the noise and the nerves and the social awkwardness that most of us carry. It's the permission to show up fully, not as a performance, not as a carefully curated version of yourself, but as the real, warm, curious, interested, deeply human person that you already are. Go into the world this week and make someone feel seen. Make someone feel heard. Use someone's name 3 times. Flood one person with a slow, genuine smile and watch what happens to their face. Ask one person to tell you more, and then actually listen. These are small acts. They cost nothing, and they add up, over time, to a life rich with real connection, with friendships that last, with professional relationships built on genuine trust, and with the quiet daily joy of knowing that you're someone who makes the world a little bit better simply by being in it and paying attention. That's everything I have for you today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. If this audiobook served you, if even one idea from today's session helps you have one better conversation this week, please take 30 seconds right now and hit that subscribe button on BITSIZBOKNGLISH. We put everything we have into every single video on this channel, and your subscription is what makes it possible for us to keep going, keep growing, and keep bringing you content like this. Hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and more people finding it means more people growing, and that matters to us deeply. Leave a comment below. I mean it. I read every single one. Tell me which technique from today hit you hardest. Tell me which one you're going to try first. Tell me what book you want us to cover next. Your comments shape what we do, and they mean more than you know. And if there is one person in your life, one friend, one colleague, one family member, who you think needs to hear this message today, please share this video with them. One share from you could genuinely start a transformation in someone else's life. You never know. This has been Bite-Size Book English. I'm so proud of you for being here, for staying to the end, for choosing growth. Keep learning, keep growing, keep connecting, and I will see you in the next one. Take good care of yourselves, and go make someone feel seen today. Goodbye for now, and thank you.